Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, to the Combat Press Midweek Report. I'm your host, Eric Reinert, broadcasting, as always, from the frigid home studio. I am joined, as always, this week and most weeks by my mainest man, Riley Cobra Contact. Riley, how are you in the frigid Chicagoland area this evening?
Freezing my balls off, but as long as I don't got work tomorrow, I don't really care. So,
Well, that makes one of us, so I hope you celebrate appropriately this evening. We are brought to you, as always, by CombatPress.com. Check out CombatPress.com for all the latest news, information, opinions, and interviews in the world of mixed martial arts. You can follow Combat Press on Twitter at Combat Press. You can go to Facebook, give Combat Press a like, and get all the information from Combat Press in your Facebook feed. Tonight we've got a decent amount of things to talk about. UFC 182, headlined by a pretty good light heavyweight title fight between Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier, and then some other stuff that happened also. So we'll talk about UFC 182. We'll preview RFA 22 coming to us this weekend. One pretty significant news item dropping today. Riley, it's as if the last big news item was the lawsuit, also dropped on a Tuesday afternoon. So it's as if the MMA world wants to hear our voices about it first, and that's why they drop the information when they do on these Tuesday afternoons. So we'll talk about the latest development in the world of MMA scandals. We'll have some rapid-fire questions, and then because we didn't get the opportunity to on the year-end mega show, Riley and I will wrap up the year in pro wrestling, give out some awards as part of our Wrestling Minute. So, Riley, UFC 182, did you happen to watch it this past weekend?
I surely did. I was in Orlando and I was out, so I wasn't able to watch it on a computer, so I had to watch the entire thing on my phone, actually. So I did pay for it, and I watched it, and I was pretty happy with it.
Really? That makes one of us. There were a couple of moments where, I found the 1,000-piece puzzle on my coffee table preferable to watching some of the stuff that I saw during that main card. So I guess we'll have to talk about that. The first fight on the card, Hector Lombard defeating Josh Burkman by decision. I think this was less one-sided, certainly, than I thought it was going to be, Riley. I don't know about you. Are you more impressed with Burkman here, or more disappointed in Lombard's inability to take care of an unranked fighter in Burkman?
I think I'm probably more disappointed with Lombard. He had a chance, and I think it was the third round to kind of put his foot on the pedal and kind of push the pace and probably finish it at some point. But I feel like he kind of let up late in the fight. But and then again, I got to give credit to Josh Burkman. He's a tough guy, and we knew he was a tough guy. He's never been knocked out, and it was kind of a mixture of both. It was good to see Burkman hang in there, and Lombard kind of disappointing. He didn't really turn it up at the end.
I guess when I think of Josh Burkman, I remember him from his first UFC tenure, where he was just kind of a guy. Just like a sort of a run-of-the-mill fighter. I was impressed with his display of confidence in the octagon against somebody with the proven finishing power of Hector Lombard, just kind of standing in front of him at times with his hands completely by his hips. Obviously not the best strategy against any elite MMA striker, but certainly one that made me raise my eyebrows. So credit to Josh Burkman for his toughness in the cage there. Obviously Hector Lombard defeating Josh Burkman, which was what everybody pretty much expected. I believe he was a heavy favorite in the Las Vegas odds. That being said, he's advanced to the 5th place in the UFC's welterweight rankings. Do you think we've seen Hector Lombard's ceiling at this point, or do you think that he could defeat any of the guys ranked above him in the UFC? Your Carlos Condits, your Rory McDonalds, etc.
Well, he certainly can. I mean, he's got the tools to do it. And, obviously he is at a weight class right now that's preferable to the one he was at. I think 170 was the way to go with him, and it was a smart move.
Yeah.
So I definitely think he can contend. I think that his next move is Rory McDonald, and I think they kind of hinted at that already anyways. And that'll be a fantastic #1 contenders fight to the winner of whoever, Johnny Hendricks or Robbie Lawler.
Yeah, I like that fight as well. I've heard Hector Lombard possibly, I think he mentioned perhaps wanting to step in for injured Tarek Saffiedine and take on Matt Brown, which is a fight that I would really love to see.
That would work as well.
either of those options, against McDonald or against Brown, very appealing from a fan's perspective. On the other side of the cage for Berkman, he didn't get starched. He did lose, and it wasn't really close. But you've got to think that the UFC is going to keep him around for a little while. Do you think he can beat guys like sort of the lower half of the top 15, your Rick Stories, your Jake Ellenberger, Damian Maia, or do you think he'll kind of flounder in the middle part of the very stacked welterweight division?
I think he's got a chance. I mean, you've seen the huge improvements he's made since the UFC, especially in the World Series of Fighting. I mean, outside of a loss to Steve Carl, I thought he looked really, really much improved in the World Series of Fighting organization. So I really think he can hang. It's just depending, who he's going to get matched up with. If he continually gets matched up with top 10 guys, it's going to be tough for him. Yeah. But he could definitely stick around the mid card, the upper mid card, the top 25, and really have some success.
All right. Next on the UFC 182 main card was a flyweight fight between Kyoji Horiguchi, who defeated Luis Gaudino by decision. 5 decisions on this card, or on the main card anyway. How many more wins do you think Horiguchi needs to get a title shot, given sort of the status of the flyweight division?
I think he needs a top 10 win. His fights so far, they haven't been easy fights, but they haven't been against a top 10 caliber guy. So,
yeah.
But knowing that there's not a lot of guys in the flyweight title picture right now, I think one win in the top 10 kind of puts him in front of most everybody else. I mean, Benavidez really has already had his 2 shots, and probably will take a few more wins to even get consideration. And obviously Dotson's still out, and I'd still think he's the top contender. So, I mean, maybe a fight with a guy like a John Moraga or a Jussier De Silva, I think, would be 2 options that could potentially put him into a number 1 contender status.
Moving on then to what I kind of considered to be the sort of anti-fight of the night, Brad Tavares versus Nate Marquardt. Brad Tavares winning a decision, but not terribly memorable in any capacity, at least in my mind. Do you think this fight really did anything significant for either fighter's career?
Well, I think it did for Tavares, definitely. Nate Marquardt's a big name in MMA. Say what you want about him, but he was a king of pancrase. He's consistently been one of the top middleweights in the world. Probably a little bit past his prime at this point, but that's a big name to have on your resume. And it really, Brad Tavares was on a 2-fight skid, and he really, really needed this win. So to get it to a guy with the caliber of Marquardt, I think it kind of puts him back in the playing field a little bit, and it gets his confidence back, because he's the surprise guy that came out of the Ultimate Fighter 11. A lot of guys didn't, fans probably didn't think much of him. They thought he was a talented young guy, but didn't think he was going to get to where he is. And he's a top 20 fighter in the UFC in the middleweight division. So obviously a huge win to get back on track for him.
All due respect to Nate Marquardt, and certainly recognizing his previous success and pretty lengthy successful track record in MMA, he's certainly not a contender in the middleweight division, I don't think, by any stretch of the imagination. So despite the fact that Brad Tavares won, it was against a guy who, from an objective standpoint, is kind of a middle of the road guy. We've seen Brad Tavares take on some guys, in the upper part of the division and fall short. So, with his success over Marquardt, do you think the UFC will give him another kind of middle of the road, sort of fringe of contendership type of guy, or do you think they'll put him up against another guy that's part of the official rankings?
It depends, and it all adds up to timing. Whoever's available at that time, and right now there's a lot of guys in the middleweight division that are tied up. So. We'll just have to see how it appears that he came out of the fight pretty unscathed, so he might be able to make a quick turnaround. But it's all, like I said, it's all about timing. But I could see them definitely giving him another top 20 guy, definitely.
How quickly would Brad Tavares beat CM Punk?
Less than a minute.
That's just the one I threw in there, because they're both in the same division. Over under, Nate Marquardt has 2 more UFC fights.
I'd say over. Again, relatively big name, and you need those kind of guys to fill out those fight night cards and those fight pass cards. So I'd say over. They'll probably give him a little bit of an easier fight in his next go around, but don't expect him to ease up on the competition too much with him.
No, certainly not. He's proven where his skill level, and I think he'll continue to be paired up against guys who have, similar levels of name recognition to his own. Co-main event, UFC 182, Donald Cerrone defeating Myles Jury. Cerrone, I think this is what his sixth straight win, something like that, 6 or 7. I believe it's 6. Myles Jury, his first professional loss in 16 fights. Was this one more about Donald Cerrone's elite level skill, or Myles Jury's relative inexperience against guys ranked as highly as Donald Cerrone?
Well, Donald Cerrone for sure. He's a guy when it's we have the old saying, a motivated BJ Penn is the most dangerous BJ Penn. That quote applies to Donald Cerrone 100%. When he is motivated, he is an absolute stud. And he went to that losing streak, I believe it was last year, and he just didn't look the same. But you could just tell his head wasn't in the cage. But now he's totally enjoying fighting, and he's back to being his crazy self. Obviously, he'll be back in less than 2 weeks at UFC Fight Night 59 against Benson Henderson, who he's lost to twice, which shows him how crazy he is. It just shows how good he is when he wants to be good. Because Myles Jury, you can say what you want about his style. He's a top 150 fighter, definitely a top 25 guy, and he got absolutely manhandled.
If I ever become a DJ, my DJ name is going to be DJ Penn. Yeah. Thank you for that idea inadvertently. Yeah. We just talked about it. Cerrone doing the short turnaround thing to take on former UFC lightweight champion, and I think a guy that was for a little while anyway in the pound-for-pound conversation, Benson Henderson. For his, right now, like if Cerrone just wanted to just kind of chill and wait for either for the result of Pettis versus Dos Anjos and or wait for Khabib Nurmagomedov to heal up, he could just do that and rest on his laurels and wait for either of those fights. But instead, like you said, he's turning around and taking on one of the elite members of probably the most top to bottom stacked division in the sport of mixed martial arts. I guess a simple question here, from a career perspective, is it a smart choice for Cerrone to be taking this fight against Henderson?
Yeah, I think it is. He doesn't have much to lose in this fight other than a winning streak. I mean, how are you going to blame him if he loses this fight? He took it on 2 weeks' notice after he just fought, and he's taking on a guy he's lost to twice. So if he loses again, it's not like, he should have beat him, because I don't know. I mean, you can't say that you're expecting him to win, but you can't say you're expecting him to lose. How are you going to say, we didn't think he was going to lose when he's already lost twice? Now he's doing this again on 2 weeks' notice. So I think it is a great move, and it kind of just makes him more popular with the fans because Twitter erupted when they found out it's Cowboy. Yeah. And again, if you're the UFC, you're looking for draws, and this guy is basically becoming a draw just based on his personality and his willingness to fight. He's a fighter's fighter. Yeah, and there's a lot of guys who won't step up to the plate on late notice, and that's why they don't get as much respect. And this guy's willing to step up at any time, any place, at any weight class. He also wanted to fight Matt Brown at 170. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But I don't think it's a bad career move. It's a high-profile fight.
Yeah, I agree. The other side of that, though, and I'm sure the other part of this is that the UFC is probably backing up the old Brinks truck to Donald Cerrone's ranch or whatever to get him to take this fight on short notice. Willingness to fight or not, this is his career that we're talking about, so I'm sure he's going to get paid quite handsomely, reported and unreported. The only reason that I asked that question, Riley, is because the lightweight division is so full of contenders that I believe that if he loses this fight to Benson Henderson, he goes from a guy who's at most one more win away from a title shot, and that win would be against Khabib Nurmagomedov, if that even was necessary, to a guy who is probably then booted from the title conversation, at least from the immediate standpoint, and replaced by Benson Henderson.
But I don't think you can blame him that much if he loses to a point where you take him out of title talks that fast, because everyone recognizes that he's going to be an immense underdog in this fight just based on timing. So even if he loses, he's not going to be completely out of the title picture. He's still just coming off a 6-fight win streak and fought twice in 2 weeks. So I don't think that can be taken too much into consideration at that point, because he could still get a high-profile fight and still be in the front of the line.
Certainly an interesting fight, regardless of the title picture implications, and I look forward, Riley, to talking about that fight with you on the next episode of this wonderful program. Let's quickly shift focus to Miles Jury, still ranked 8th in the UFC lightweight division because, a loss to Donald Cerrone, certainly nothing to be ashamed of, considering Cerrone's immense level of demonstrated skill that we've seen. Let's do a couple of hypotheticals with Jury taking on similar guys in the rankings. Who would you take, Jury versus Josh Thompson?
I would probably at this point probably Miles Jury, but it'd be a close one definitely.
I know this guy is fighting Michael Johnson very soon, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. Jury versus Edson Barboza.
Jury based on takedowns and ground control.
Sure. And finally, Jury versus Gilbert Melendez, which is a fight I'd love to see.
Gilbert Melendez, his experience and his stand-up would be too much for Miles. He despite that loss, he just had to Pettis. Gilbert's still elite, so it'd be a tough fight for Miles.
Nevertheless, that's a fight, I think, of those three that I'd like to see most because they're both coming off a loss, but they're still both ranked in the top 10. So I hope the UFC makes that fight. And, it's kind of like up-and-comer versus, like, grizzled veteran, and their styles are kind of similar. So that could be a good one. I hope the UFC makes that one. I guess we'll see. Finally, main event, 5 rounds in the UFC's light heavyweight division. Jon Jones effectively clearing out his last remaining credible contender, aside from possibly Anthony Rumble Johnson, defeating Daniel Cormier pretty decisively. Riley, how did you score this one, if you can recall?
If I remember correctly, I had it 49-46. It actually might have been 50-45. I cannot exactly remember. I had a few drinks, but I just remember that I did enjoy the fight. But I said Jones pretty much. If he didn't sweep the scorecards, it was 4-1.
Yeah, I think I had it 4-1. Cormier,
I think I did too.
Cormier had a real good second round.
Yes, you're right. Yes.
I think that's probably. I mean, it was pretty close, but I think Cormier probably took that second round. But nevertheless, overall, right. Jones was able to more effectively implement his offense, and certainly deserved the win on the scorecards, I thought. And I don't think there's any disagreement from folks who watched the fight. First question, follow-up question after the scorecard, and it's a simple one, Riley. Is Jon Jones the best fighter of all time?
Yes. Simple. He's the most well-rounded. He's the most athletic. He's the most physically gifted. His strength of schedule hasn't been easy. He hasn't taken on too many cans. So I think there's no question about it that Jon Jones is the greatest of all time at this point.
Yeah, I mean the only other I think credible person that you could put in there would be Anderson Silva. But the main difference for me is what you just said, strength of schedule.
Right, yeah.
So, and we don't need to get into why, but Jones has faced just an elite group for the last 5 years, pretty much.
Yeah, and I think you could throw Fedor in there as well. But again, Fedor did fight a lot of less credible opponents, but he was absolutely dominant until the end of his career.
Yeah, it's funny how short sometimes our memories become because, up until a couple of years ago, I think the name Fedor, still rang out very loudly in the world of MMA, but since, he kind of went on that skid, many people at least have shuffled him to the recesses of their memory in favor of guys like Jon Jones and Cain Velasquez, etc. And with good reason, modernity and all. Let's see. Jon Jones, again, pretty much cleared out his division at this point. Do you think he should wait for Gustafsson Johnson, or do you think he should move to heavyweight at this point?
No, he should wait for Gustafsson Johnson. I don't even know why he would move to heavyweight. I can understand the challenge, but if he's as dominant as he is at the light heavyweight, what's the point of moving up to heavyweight? What does he need to prove? I mean, the only fight you want to see him in is against Cain Velasquez, but the dude can't even stay healthy enough to take on the contenders in his division at this point. So it's really something I'm not even interested in yet.
I'm interested in Jon Jones versus Junior Dos Santos.
I'm not interested in that fight at all. I think Jones would finish him within 2 rounds.
Interesting.
By submission.
If not for Jon Jones and if not for Cain Velasquez, would Daniel Cormier be a UFC champion?
So that's a tough question because he does seem like he's one of the best light heavyweights in the world.
And one of the best heavyweights.
Yeah, and actually I think that he's more suitable for heavyweight because, he's as strong as a guy that's at the 265-pound limit, but he's small enough where he's quicker and more athletic, but still as explosive. So I actually kind of like him better at heavyweight. everyone was hyping him up at light heavyweight, but let's see who he's fought at light heavyweight so far. He fought Patrick Cummins on late notice, which even if he fought Patrick Cummins on a full play, he probably would have kicked him.
Different class of fighter.
And then he fought 43-year-old, 185-pound Dan Henderson.
Off TRT.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, the earning of the title shot, I still think he needed a fight. But, I mean, he's still going to be one of the best at 205. But for some reason, I just really want to see him back at heavyweight.
Will Daniel Cormier ever be a UFC champion?
I think he will at some point. I think it's because he'll never go for the heavyweight strap as long as Kane's champion. And, I don't think he beats John Jones. I said he's got great wrestling, but the things that John Jones brings to the table, he doesn't have any answers for. He got out-wrestled by John Jones. That's his best attribute.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be tough, but I think he can at some point.
Other fights or performances or thoughts on UFC 182 that you want to mention?
Yeah, two things. Paul Felder's spinning back fist knockout.
Hell yeah.
Literally, the first week of January, we have a knockout of the year contender, and
Yep.
It's going to be really hard to beat because that was one of the cleanest landing, brutal, one-punch spinning back fist knockouts. Felder hit him so perfectly that Castillo was out before he even hit the mat. And you could see in the corner of the screen, you could see the Team Alpha Male guys go like this, just grab their heads. It was actually kind of crazy when you saw it in slow-mo. And the second thing, I got to go with the ladies. Marion Renault absolutely dominated Alexis Dufresne on the Fight Pass portion of the card to a point where she was getting 25 scores, so 30-25. That shows you how badly she beat her. So that was a very, very impressive performance by her as well.
Talking about Team Alpha Male, I was very impressed with Cody Garbrandt.
Yep.
Young gun, definitely. Speaking of gun, did you see the tattoo that he's got of like the pistol in the?
I did not.
Sticking out of his shorts. I suppose you were watching it on your phone. Yeah, he's got a very interesting tattoo of like a part of a pistol sticking out the back of his shorts. The great story with him and the young man that overcame leukemia or the boy that was there. That's a pretty cool story. So good on Cody Garbrandt for the win. Look forward to watching him fight again in the near future. This weekend we've got one event, RFA 22. The big fight from that event is a welterweight title contest for the vacant RFA welterweight title between Chidi Njokuani and Gilbert Smith. Riley, thoughts on this one for the weekend?
I think in general, and I thought this, and then I saw, Jason Coles posted on Twitter. I think the RFA cards have really gone downhill since Scott Cutbirth has left as the matchmaker there, because this main event doesn't really excite me like it should. And in fact, the whole card doesn't excite me like the RFA events used to. They used to have much more credible prospects, better guys that they were developing, and it just kind of seems that since Scott Cutbirth left, that their cards have kind of been watered down lately. The main event is solid just because I like Chidi Njokuani. Gilbert Smith is an Ultimate Fighter veteran, but I never really thought highly of his skills. I think at 170 he's a brute, but I just really not too excited about this main event to a point where I don't even think I'm going to watch it really. So, I mean, unless Chidi Njokuani can pull off a huge knockout, I think it's going to be a boring lay-in pray fest by Gilbert Smith.
Other fights from the RFA card that you want to shout out?
There's, the co-main event has Mark Dickman in it, and I think that Mark Dickman is a very good prospect despite the fact he's coming off a loss to Justin Lawrence. But, I mean, other than that, I mean, Ricky Musgrave's solid, but, I mean, just looking up and down the card, there's not a huge amount of people I'm really, really looking forward to watching. So, like I said, I don't know if I'll be tuning into this card.
Late breaking news coming to us this afternoon. John Jones, UFC champion, late off of his win over Daniel Cormier that we just discussed, entering a drug treatment facility after testing positive for the main metabolite in cocaine. He tested positive after taking a drug test in early December. The results came back in mid-December. Obviously a few questions I have here for you, Riley, just kind of on your thoughts about this. But my main thing here is that the UFC had to know about this, right? And they just didn't say anything until after the event, when they're taking care of it that way. So I think that's kind of interesting. I think the UFC's got some explaining to do. But they effectively covered for their light heavyweight champion. Now they got to cover for themselves, and I'm going to have some thoughts about that later this week on CombatPress.com. Riley, do you think the UFC will strip Jon Jones of his belt?
No, that's not going to happen at all. They let him fight for the belt, for Christ's sake. And the reason people are saying why they let him, compete if he failed for cocaine. If you actually look at the guidelines, him testing positive was not during what was, I forgot how it's worded, but basically not in competition. Yeah. So that's why he was allowed to fight. And everyone's kind of outraged over that, but you can't be mad. You can't be mad at him. The rule's the rule. He was allowed to fight. So, and obviously, I think there's something in that. The Nevada Commission wanted to cut off the gate, the live gate, so which made a huge gate. It was almost a $4 million gate in the live event. So, I mean, there's a couple factors that go into it, and everyone's really upset over it. But there's a lot of people that are really, really outraged by this, and I think it kind of just speaks to MMA fans and how shallow they are. Obviously we want. I think the main concern should be that he does get clean because cocaine is a terrible drug, and it's addicting, and I'm sure this isn't an isolated incident. I'm sure this has been going on for a little bit. So, I think the main concern here should be to help the champion get clean and get his life back on track.
I don't disagree with you there. The only reason that I would even ask that question is because I take a very sort of cynical view of how large companies conduct their business with regard to public relations. Like, I believe that companies are willing to do pretty much anything in terms of damage control. And, well, let me ask this question. Do you think if a different fighter, one that wasn't Jon Jones, got popped for cocaine metabolites outside of competition, recognizing that the Nevada State Athletic Commission, because it's outside of competition, they don't have the power to suspend that fighter. But the UFC can do whatever it wants because it's a private organization. So do you think if a different fighter tested positive for cocaine, he or she would be treated differently than Jon Jones?
Well, definitely. I mean, the people comparing, I saw people on Twitter comparing Jon Jones to Matt Riddle getting fired for weed. It's like, that's just completely is bandering, which again, whatever, apples and oranges, but Matt Riddle is not a draw. Matt Riddle is not selling out arenas. He's not a pay-per-view draw. He's not going to be treated the same as Jon Jones, who's arguably the biggest star in the sport, one of the biggest draws in the sport, and the greatest fighter, as we mentioned earlier, of all time. So yeah, there's a sliding scale of how people are going to be treated. The UFC is not just going to hang their main star out to dry. That's not sound business. I mean, you want to piss off your champion and send him over to, send him away from the company. That's a terrible decision. He's your guy, and you have to stand by him no matter what happens. Now, I do think they need to put in some kind of punishment. Maybe suspend him for like half a year, 6 months. Nothing major, but he needs to be around for this year, this crucial year, which may make or break the UFC in terms of pay-per-view buys. Because last year was very down, and this is the year they need to kind of recover the pay-per-view business with big fights. And he has a big fight in whoever wins the Anthony Johnson-Alexander Gustafsson fight.
Oh, no doubt, and I'm sure he'll be, recovered and out of rehab at that point, so that everybody can make the appropriate amount of money that will be made off of that fight. I don't think it's a question at this point of the UFC standing by their guy, because they're going to do that because Jon Jones makes them a lot of money. He's a big-time draw, as you said, so they need to protect their assets in that respect. I think it's more a matter of the convenient timing of it all. Like, if this was such a serious problem that Jon Jones needed to go into rehab, then why is he competing on pay-per-view television in a fight?
I don't think they wanted it to be a distraction, which is understandable. You don't want your show and your main fighter and basically the entire event being held up by the fact that this guy did this. You don't want to distract the entire night. Instead of the event being about a heated rivalry between two guys that hate each other, that legitimately have heat and don't like each other, the night would have been clouded by, oh, yeah, these guys don't like each other, but he just failed for cocaine, so that's what we're going to focus this on, because that's what the focus is on. So I think that's the reasoning behind that. You know, you may or may not like it, but and if I was in the same position, I would do the same exact thing.
Right, but my question is, like, there seems to be an inconsistency here, because if you need to go to rehab, that means you have a pretty serious drug problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the UFC knew, I mean, presumably the decision to go to rehab, to drug rehab, wasn't made between Saturday and Tuesday, or Sunday and Tuesday, unless something significant, like really significant, changed. And who knows? Maybe John Jones went on a giant coke binge after he defeated Daniel Cormier, and then realized, holy shit, I need to get myself into rehab. So, hey, I suppose that's a possibility. But what I'm saying is, if it's a big enough problem for him to go into rehab, why is he still competing from a health perspective? Why isn't he in rehab before the fight needs to happen? If it's
and that's a fair question, because obviously his health is the most important. But again, you have to consider more than just him. If he doesn't compete, 23 other people don't get a paycheck. That event would not have gone on. 23 guys would have lost out on money, and some of these guys big money as well. So yeah, I can understand that, but the show sometimes just has to go on, and it doesn't sound moral or right, and there's really no reasoning behind it, but it needed to go on for that fact. And because it's good for the company, it got everybody paid that night, and it would have been catastrophic to the company to that happening. And I don't think that, here's the thing, if his coke problem was severely bad, that would have never happened. Nothing would have happened. Okay? However, I think the reason he's going to rehab because of this failed drug test is publicity. To say, yes, our champ made a mistake, he is going to right it. I don't think he has and this is just an assumption, I don't think he has a giant coke problem that is affecting his health. I think that he's going to rehab as a way to save face for the failed drug test. And that makes a ton of sense to me, and that's why everything went down the way it did.
That's really what I was trying to get out of you there, Riley.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Is that the rehab, granted, all cynicism aside, if John Jones has a substance abuse problem, I hope that he gets the help that he needs. But I don't know, like, I've known people with really bad substance abuse problems, and they can barely walk down the street, let alone fight on the elite level against a two-time Olympic wrestler and put in the training camp time to do that. Now, John Jones is a special guy, but I'm just saying that I agree with you there that the rehab thing may be, at least in part, to kind of save a little bit of face for everybody. But again, if John Jones, we hope John Jones gets the help that he needs, whatever help that may be. Let's see. What do you think this does for John Jones's public appeal, I guess? Because on one hand, it kind of proves what a lot of people are saying, that he puts on this facade and whatever. But on the other hand, if he does have a serious drug problem, I think it kind of makes him a sympathetic guy, because he's sick, and we hope he gets better. So what do you think?
He had heel heat, as we say in the wrestling world, massive heat, nuclear heat. He's one of the most vilified guys, in MMA. So,
not by me.
Well, he's my favorite fighter, and there's no doubt about that.
Nick Diaz is mine, if that tells you anything about what kind of fighter.
Okay, well, obviously you like the druggies, but anyways.
Hey, you do too, John Jones, right?
I like John Jones. Well, I more liked him for the DUI. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry about that. That was a little too hardcore even for me.
Okay, back to
yeah, I don't even remember what I was talking about now.
What if John Jones becomes more vilified or more sympathetic, or do you think it just is both?
I think more vilified. I think, it's hard to get more vilified the way he acted after the Cormier fight and stuff, but this just kind of, like you were saying, continues to add layers to the cake here. He was when he came to the UFC, he was this nice, respectful young man, and he's just really, really not. It doesn't appear that he's really as sincere as he tries to sell himself to be. So, I've already seen it on Twitter. Most fans are turning on him again, so... but that's what makes him such a draw. People want to tune in and watch to see what happens to him. So he's kind of the nature boy Ric Flair of the UFC of the 70s and 80s. He's the top heel, and that's why he's making the big bucks.
Thanks for indulging me on questions of drug legitimacy and things like that, Riley. Appreciate the discussion. And for the record, I like Nick Diaz because he's the anti-John Jones in that respect. He's real as hell. He
embraces it.
he is who he is, and he doesn't give a shit. And I can relate to that mentality. So plus he's a really exciting fighter. He's an exciting fighter. All right, Riley, rapid fire time. Are you ready?
Yep.
Here we go. Obviously, we talked last episode, John Jones versus Daniel Cormier being the best fight of the year, probably the best fight of the last 5 years, and perhaps one of the best that the UFC is going to put on for the next 5 years. That being said, it's over and done with. So which fight that's been scheduled thus far for 2015 are you now most looking forward to watching?
Chris Weidman, Vitor Belfort, especially because I want to see how Vitor is off TRT, and I think Chris Weidman is the second best fighter in the world right now, in my opinion. He's right behind John Jones.
I would say Anderson Silva versus Nick Diaz because, Nick Diaz being in very high esteem with me, but I just think Anderson Silva is gonna destroy him.
Yeah, I agree.
From an objective standpoint, and I hate saying that. So with that being said, I've got two fights that I've listed here. I've got Ian McCall versus John Lineker. I think that's a good one that was delayed, and I'm looking forward to that one. I think that'll sort things out a little bit in the flyweight division. And Jacare Souza versus Yoel Romero. That's one I'm super stoked for. Okay, Tarek Saffiedine out versus Matt Brown. Who would you like to see replace him?
We said it earlier. I think Hector Lombard's the right choice there. They're both top 10 guys, and I'm sure he wasn't really hurt in that Berkman fight. He didn't really take much damage, so I think that's the best way to do it. And if not, I think why not Rory McDonald? It would be another fight for him to take while he waits for Lawler Hendricks to clear their business up. And the win would legitimately make him the top contender at that point.
Agree with both of those picks. Dark horse candidate for me, just because I think he would make Matt Brown an exciting opponent. Rick Story. All right. Agree to disagree, I guess. CM Punk did a Q&A session with a bunch of people, and I don't know, I didn't watch it, but I heard that it was kind of embarrassing for some of those people who asked him questions. If you could ask CM Punk one question, what would you ask him?
Man, that's a tough one. I'd probably just ask him some sort of pro wrestling question about the Indies early in the days, because he came up with a guy from Illinois by the name of Adam Scrap Iron Pierce, and I'd love to hear some stories about what they did back in the day. I love Adam Scrap Iron Pierce, so I think that'd be a good question to ask.
I was fortunate enough to see Adam Scrap Iron Pierce perform at the last Ring of Honor show that I went to this summer at Turner Ballroom in Madison. And
I saw him at a small show in De Pere, Wisconsin.
De Pere, Wisconsin, man, that's like right where I grew up.
That's where I went to college.
Did you go to St. Norbert?
I did.
Oh. Well, then we're familiar with...
Saw him wrestle at Baba Louie's.
Wow. Do you know where... Sorry, viewers. We're going to reminisce for a second about Green Bay, because that's how it is. Did you ever go to the Keweenaw?
Yeah, a few times. That place is kind of run down and shitty, but I've been there on Thursdays for fish bowls.
I used to go there all the time with my parents. And did you, did you know where Austin's is in Alloway?
I never went out towards Alloway.
Oh, okay. That's where I grew up. Okay, anyway, back to MMA. Sorry, fans. Let's see. CM Punk 0-0 in professional MMA. Riley Contact 0-0 in professional MMA. Would you fight CM Punk?
Yeah, why not? Good payday, and I don't think I could do too horrible.
Eddie Alvarez.
Do I get a chance to train for the fight, or is it on the spot?
No, absolutely. You'd have the same training time to train. He'd get paid way more than you, but you'd have the same amount of time to train and everything.
All right, what are we talking about? So how much money is he making, and how much would I be making?
Let's see. He's gonna make $250 to show and $250 to win, plus points off the pay-per-view.
Okay.
And you're gonna make 10 to show, 10 to win.
Oh, no doubt about it. I'd totally do that.
All right. That's fantastic.
That's basically saying, like, also, would I like to get 10 grand? I wouldn't even train. I just get 10 grand and get my ass kicked real quick. It's really not that big of a deal.
All right. Riley Contact, for the record, viewers of this show, will get his ass kicked for $10,000. So
Well, that's assuming I get my ass kicked.
he'll defeat you with the Anaconda Vice Grip, or the Go to Sleep.
Yeah, right.
Let's see. Eddie Alvarez off of the card coming up here in Boston, replaced, of course, by Donald Cerrone. Do you think this ends any prospect of Eddie Alvarez being a star in the UFC, or do you think there's some glimmer of hope there yet?
There's a glimmer of hope a little bit. I mean, I don't know too many UFC fans that are huge Bellator fans, so I don't know if too many people knew who he was totally or how big of a star he was there. But, you know, if he doesn't get a win in his next fight, it's going to be really tough to kind of justify. But, I mean, they threw him right to the wolves with Cerrone, and then they were going to throw him again to the wolves with Henderson. So he's not going to have an easy road.
Finally, and this is a little bit inside baseball here, it was announced recently that MMA Junkie, which is owned by USA Today, is hiring Bloody Elbow editor Brent Brookhouse as an assistant editor at their site. To me, Brent Brookhouse is known as like the primary muckraking journalist in mixed martial arts. Do you think the USA Today is like this massive corporate behemoth? Do you think that they will stifle his efforts to do things like that and report on things that maybe they don't want to get out in the public because of business deals, or do you think he's still going to be given free rein to do his thing?
I don't know, and I don't really care. I don't read his crap, so, I mean, I've seen some of his tweets, and he seems very self-righteous and like he has to fight for other people's battles, so I don't really like those type of people. And, you know, it is what it is. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but I just don't really, I wouldn't read his work anyway, so.
I think the journalism world needs people like Brookhouse who are willing to fight those battles, 'cause that's what journalism is. So, you know, like him or not, I think he has broken some good stories and had some good takes. So
I'm sure he has, but I mean, again, just seeing some retweets of tweets that he's written, it just seems like he's very self-righteous and like he's gotta be, you know, the knight in shining armor. And I'm just, I don't know. People like that rub me the wrong way sometimes. They're kind of saying that I'm better than you and I'm going to show you why, and et cetera, et cetera. They're always trying to bring people to their level. So that's just my personal opinion. I could meet him one day and he could be the nicest guy ever, but, you know, that's just what I feel right now.
All right. On to the Wrestling Minute. Let's hand out a couple of awards here. Riley, who's your Wrestler of the Year?
Mine's going to be kind of a dark horse because he became, in my opinion, the top heel of the year, and I think it's Seth Rollins. You know, consistently put on the top quality matches, worked with some of the best guys, and really has become what Randy Orton was in the mid to late 2000s. He's the top heel right now, and there's a good reason why, and he's still getting better.
Yep, I thought you were going to pick Dean Ambrose, so I put Seth Rollins as well because of all of the reasons you just said. Card of the Year, Riley.
WrestleMania. I mean, it's never really going to be comparable. You know, the Daniel Bryan story, there were some really quality matches, so, you know, he pulled double duty too, and neither of those were short matches, so I would probably go with WrestleMania.
I'm going to be a hipster and say Ring of Honor Final Battle. Top to bottom, one of the best cards I've ever seen, including the incredible six-man tag team match that we talked about a few weeks ago.
What if I would have said TNA Final Destination?
I watched TNA Bound for Glory, the one they did from Japan.
Yeah.
Not a terrible card.
Yeah, they put on good wrestling. They just have terrible storylines. It's not a big deal.
I watched the Wrestle Kingdom 9, the New Japan one that was on after UFC 182. Yeah, it was.
How was it?
It was great, really great.
Sure, the Japan stuff's great, and then you had Jim Ross on the call. So.
Right, and I mean, like, it was probably a third guys that I've seen in Ring of Honor too, because they've got that talent exchange agreement. So it's pretty cool. Riley, pro wrestling moment of the year.
I would probably say the breakup of the Shield. That was massive. I mean, especially because it seemed kind of early. You know, that they could have probably dragged that on for another year or two if they wanted to. And they broke it up, and it was shocking. And it led to pretty much all three guys becoming breakout stars on their own. Reigns is pretty much, as everyone is predicting, to be the next John Cena. Dean Ambrose is probably the most over babyface right now. He gets better reactions than anybody. if they keep booking him the way they are, that he's probably not going to. And like I just said, Rollins is a top heel in the company. So all three of those guys, the breakup was good for them and bad for them, but it was probably more beneficial to them in the long run individually.
Who do you think of that group will be the biggest star ultimately?
I think it'll be, the only reason I say Reigns is because the WWE is going to give him every chance in the world to get to where Cena is, his spot, because he's got the look and the style that they like. If he doesn't work on his mic work, it's getting better, believe me. But if he doesn't work on that, it's gonna be tough, because Ambrose and Rollins can both talk on the mic, and they can both wrestle very well. They're not as big as him, but they can do some really good stuff. But I mean, Ambrose has has a Stone Cold Light version to his character, and it's going to be really hard for them to kind of hold him back. But again, if they keep booking him in losses and stuff, it's going to be really tough for him to break out the way that he should.
I think Seth Rollins could end up being the big star here. Not, I think all three of them are going to have pretty good careers, but he's got, he used to be really bad on the mic, and he's gotten real good.
Oh yeah, he's unbelievable now.
Yeah, and I think he could, he's not the biggest dude, but he's very, very athletic, and the obvious comparison is Shawn Michaels, I think, with
Yep.
with the style that they both have. So I think he could really put it together. Let's see. Speaking of up-and-coming guys, which or women, which I threw this in here, so I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, Riley. Which NXT wrestler do you think will ultimately be the biggest star? Which current NXT wrestler?
Yeah, that's tough, because there's really a ton of people down there. So you mean the next guy to come up, or the next guy to be a breakout star with WWE?
I mean the current group that's on the NXT roster. If we look down the road 10 years from now, which of those men or women will be seen as like one of the big stars on the main roster?
It's hard not to say Sami Zayn, because he's over now in NXT, and he's the champion there, and he again is another guy that continually has top-notch matches, and people care about him because they like him. He's a guy that they could book as an underdog type guy, kind of like a Daniel Bryan, and he's just going to go out there, work his ass off every night, and really get his thing. And again, he's undersized, but he does things that get people wanting to watch more. So and again, the top 10 matches that the WWE had on their website, he was in 3 of them this year in NXT. And so that just kind of shows you there. I mean, I think Neville's got a good chance, Adrian Neville, because of his athletic ability and his flying ability, but for some reason the WWE doesn't really book flying wrestlers as well as they should. And then obviously the old Kevin Steen, he could be an unstoppable monster heel, but with the WWE, how they book heels, it'll be tough there. So there's a lot of talent. There's more. I think there's more talent in NXT right now than there is in most of the WWE.
You mentioned Kevin Owens. You weren't too high on him when he first signed with WWE. Have you changed your tune there, Riley?
No, it wasn't that I wasn't high on him. I said that the WWE, I didn't think that they were gonna give him as much of a chance based on his look, because he's he's a pudgy guy, but I mean, for being a pudgy guy, very athletic and skilled. But I just think, given the look, WWE is set on this look that they've had since the 80s when the steroids were running rampant. So
the Triple H look.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I think Triple H really likes Kevin Steen. So if he starts to take more control, there is a chance that Steen could be a huge star with him. But I just said that given the body type that they usually look for, I didn't think that I thought that he may flop just based off the fact they might not help him out a lot.
Sure. Okay. That's you're right. I'm sorry for that.
No. Yeah, it could have been perceived that way too. So.
The only concern I have about Sami Zayn is that I don't know, and I think given the right twists to his character, I think that this could probably be proven wrong. But I'm not sure how effective of a heel he will be, because a guy can be face forever. See John Cena, but I like guys who can kind of go back and forth between face and heel every couple of years. And with that in mind, I think Finn Balor has a really good chance to be a big star. Not only like when he came out, and I hadn't watched a ton of New Japan before Finn Balor, previously known as Prince Devitt in New Japan, debuted with NXT. But when he came out on NXT R Evolution with like the full like Spider-Man Venom body paint, like that was impressive. So just like from a visual standpoint, he really has it put together. He's really good in the ring. I think he's definitely got the look, even though he's a little small. He's still got the look that the WWE goes for, and he's got the in-ring charisma. So I think he could end up being a big star.
How awesome would it be? And I know they always do invasion angles, and most of the time they fizzle out. That core group of guys, it would leave NXT kind of depleted. But you take Kevin Steen, Kenta, Prince Devitt, Sami Zayn, and then Adrian Neville. You take those 5 guys, and then maybe throw in like one more person in there, and you throw them in the WWE and you smash them over like you did the Shield. How awesome would that be? Maybe it would take a little time because they're indie guys and kids probably wouldn't know them as well, but they could totally smash them over, and I think that would be an awesome invasion angle to have like those 5 guys plus maybe one more person just bowling their way through WWE.
That one person should be Charlotte because it would give the Divas division another legitimate competitor.
The only reason I wouldn't use Charlotte is because they're going to go based on the Ric Flair's daughter angle, and that makes sense. So if they're going to do that with a lady, you think maybe like a Sasha Banks. Or,
okay.
I would say Bayley, but she's too good of a baby face to really work that with. So I never thought Seth Rollins would be a great heel, and he ends up being one of the best. So maybe you just got to give Sami Zayn, maybe a little bit of time. Yeah. And again, you put him in that background, you put him in that group. He doesn't have to heel it up as much because he's kind of just following the lead of the group. So I think that'd be an awesome angle that would never ever happen. But I think given their connection to the indie scene and how long they've been doing this, I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, I won't disagree with you there. Riley, your WrestleMania main event prediction for this April, I think April.
It'll be Brock Lesnar. I'm gonna do 2 because based off of recent events, it's either gonna be Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar versus Daniel Bryan.
See, I'm gonna go. My booking prediction will be that Lesnar retains in this 3-way dance. Mm-hmm. But then Rollins cashes in, grabs the belt, and then it'll be Reigns-Rollins, not only then for the belt, but also to squash their whatever feud because of the Shield breakup or whatever.
They should throw Ambrose in that too. How sick would that be? All 3 Shield members, triple threat main event.
And then I think your co-main event at this point's got to be John Cena versus Triple H, right? Like Cena versus the authority figure guy.
Yeah, but that they're probably going to have Triple H work with Sting, which makes sense. So
you don't think they'll do Sting Taker?
No, I don't think Undertaker's going to be. I think he's done. If they do, that would be awesome. But the storyline wouldn't make sense because Triple H wants a piece of Sting for what he did at Survivor Series. So they really have to think of some sort of swerve there. I honestly think Cena will wrestle Rollins at WrestleMania in some sort of gimmicked up match, and that Lesnar will fight either Daniel Bryan or Roman Reigns. Probably Roman Reigns, though.
My moment of the year, I forgot to mention it. Daniel Bryan defeating Triple H at WrestleMania.
Okay.
When the ref counted the third, the 1, 2, 3, I jumped up in my living room and cheered because that was a cool moment. Even more than him winning the belt was him defeating Triple H.
Well, because you knew once he won that match in the triple threat, he was going to win the belt. I mean, you didn't know if Triple H was actually going to put him over. So
right.
Yeah. So you're right. That was a good moment as well.
Finally, Riley, before we close out the show, the thing you want to happen most in 2015 pro wrestling.
Oh, yeah, there's so many things. Better storylines. They need to really cut back on the amount of content they have because I'm sick of seeing the same matches all the time. Push Mizdow back to Damian Sandow after he feuds with The Miz. Push Cesaro. Push Luke Harper. Stop having Eric Rowan lose after you had him set up so well.
He's fired now.
Yeah, whatever. Continue moving Dolph Ziggler into the main event picture. I think they're actually on their way to doing that. He's doing a lot of important things. Yeah, I know. There's so many things. And I think they do need to clean house a little bit. There's so many guys in the roster that just really are just taking up space. And they need to disband the New Day, for Christ's sake, and put Big E Langston back to where he belongs. Sit him out for a while, let him kind of just sit on the shelf, then maybe put in some vignettes for him, and then have him come back and just smash himself over. use the 5-count gimmick. I thought the 5-count gimmick was awesome. It got him over in NXT, and I think it could honestly work in WWE because fans like to be interacted with like that. There's a lot of things, though, that need to be done.
Before I get to my thing, and it's more specific and absurd than that, when I went to a house show in Madison, I might have told you this already, Big E Langston wrestled Wade Barrett. And I made 2 signs that night. One just said 5, so it's big number 5, and the other just said medium E with an arrow. And it was awesome. That's my creativity with regard to wrestling. The other thing about the New Day, I was waiting for them, because I thought it was like a satire, like based on the criticism that the WWE has gotten for how it characterizes black wrestlers. But I don't think it is anymore. Like, I was waiting for them to be like, what the hell, and kind of be like a pseudo 2015 Nation of Domination.
It should have been.
But I don't think it is. It's just like...
You know what it should have been? It should have been 5 guys, and it should have been a Nation of Domination kind of clone. And they have the right 3 guys. They should have Xavier Woods as the mouthpiece, because he actually is very good on the mic.
Same with Big E.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a heel Kofi Kingston, because we've never seen it before.
Yeah.
Big E Langston, who could be a great monster.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's got the personality for a face, but he could totally pull off being a heel.
Either or.
Titus O'Neil,
Yep.
who's just absolutely being wasted. And then I think just to have the experience factor in there, R-Truth, who could also be a mouthpiece. Because remember, R-Truth a couple years ago was hot.
Yeah.
And they could have all of them. And I considered having Mark Henry, but you don't want to have him in both the Nation and this new group because I think that might kind of make the connection there. So that's what the 5 should have been, and I think it would have been an awesome angle.
I'd leave out
especially given the race issues that we have in this current coming off the summer. It might have been a controversial angle, but controversy creates views.
I would leave out R-Truth and put in Darren Young, reunite the $1 million player.
I'm not a huge fan of Darren Young, and I don't think it would work as well as having R-Truth, because R-Truth is a awesome heel.
All right, the thing I want to have happen most in 2015, and to me this would erase all of the terrible bullcrap that we've been put through this year in WWE, and that's to have the Neon Icon, Jody High Roller, a.k.a. Riff Raff, who is now up to like 230 pounds and got the official endorsement of Hulk Hogan, appear in some capacity at WrestleMania. Ugh. That would be dope.
You're just a giant idiot. That was a waste.
You're not the first person to call me that, Riley, and I'm sure you won't be the last. But you know what? I am who I am. Just like
I got another one. No More Authority. It's really played out. And can we please, for Christ's sake, have some clean finishes in the main events instead of DQs every week? Fuck.
Riley wants better writing, better finishes, no more authority. All I want to see is the Neon Icon.
And no more PG. PG's got to go. It's ridiculous. And bring back blood. God damn it. There's so many things that need to change.
All I want is Riff Raff. Okay, that's going to do it for this edition of the Combat Press Midweek Report. Once again, check out combatpress.com for all the latest news, info, opinions, and interviews in the world of MMA. Follow Combat Press on Twitter at Combat Press. Like Combat Press on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter at Reinert Eric. You can follow Riley on Twitter at Big Rouse MMA. Riley, 2015, is this going to be the year that we get to 1 million followers for Riley Contek?
It seems like I'm losing them more and more every day. I'm back to like almost a 250 territory. Oh, nobody wants to win.
Yeah, well, who's the big loser now? No, I don't know. Yeah, it's still me. Let's see. I think that's it. Yeah, check out combatpress.com for all the latest. For Riley Contek, I am Eric Reinert. Tune in next week, Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern Time, for the next edition of this program. Until then, have a good week.